that. So, the title of tonight's episode is You Don't Need Game. And I hope that when you look at this, you find it interesting. In particular, Lee, if you're a guy who, is MGTOW and you're getting tired of guys telling you that you need to level up, that you need to improve your game, things that I personally don't agree with for a number of reasons. We'll talk about those. I'm here to let you know you don't need game if you're willing to travel, if you're willing to explore the options. This is going to be a conversation about things you can do to find successful dating outcomes without having to redefine yourself. Let's jump into this exploration. We're going to be taking a look at some different inputs, but for now, I want to open with this. It ticks me off. Well, yeah, it does. It ticks me off when people say you need to improve your game, you need to level up. I think that game is a myth. It's complete baloney. But let's kind of talk about game for a second as we open this conversation. Because what is game? When people say you need a better game, well, if you really think about what game is, let's say game is interest. You need to be more interesting. Is that humor? Is that perspective? Is that visually how you look? There are a lot of things that game could be, but fundamentally what it boils down to is you being interesting. Now, here's why I think the game is just utter nonsense. Talk to people who preach game, and here's what you'll find. The guys who are talking about game and having game, they're never ugly guys. I have never seen an ugly guy talk about how you need game, you need to work on your game, because it doesn't work. You're an attractive person, you get pretty privilege, you can do lots of things and people will find them interesting, and you can say that you have game, but what we're really talking about is that you have an interesting look. So you get away with more. Maybe you've got, the sense of humor of Jerry Seinfeld. That can help. But if you look like a troll, well, you get put in a box. Funny, ugly guy. You can have all the game you want. If there isn't that physical attraction, it's not really going to work. There's a guy, Wheat Waffles, YouTuber. He's black pill. And for perspective, as we talk red pill, black pill, all these different things, when you think of red pill, the driving idea behind red pill is hypergamy. When you think of black pill, the driving idea behind black pill is looks. In the red pill, the more money you make, the more successful you should expect your outcomes to be. In black pill, the more handsome you are, the more successful you should expect your outcomes to be. And the reverse holds true. Red pill guys who don't have money have bad outcomes. Black pill guys who aren't attractive have bad outcomes. I don't fully buy into the red pill. I don't fully buy into the black pill, but I do think that they both make interesting points. I also think they miss a couple of obvious things. However, here is what the black pill basically showed. Take guys who are very similar in the way they approach women, but one is handsome and one is normal, let's say. Their results are wildly different. So it has nothing to do with their confidence. It has nothing to do with their approach. It has everything to do with who is using the game. And if that's the case, then it means that the game doesn't matter. It's who the presenter is. That all said, kind of let's talk about what you see in my background here. Up, up, down, down. Can't see it all. Left, right, B, A, start. Some of you know exactly what this is. Some of you don't. If you're old enough, then you may have played with Super Nintendo. There was a game on Super Nintendo called Contra. Contra was a war game. It was fun, but Contra was insanely difficult to play. You weren't going to beat Contra. You started with a couple of lives. You were going to lose all of those lives in fairly short order, unless you knew the cheat code. Enter this cheat code, get infinite lives, and all of a sudden, Contra is winnable. You can win the game if you know the cheat code. There are no true cheat codes to life, but there are more versus less favorable situations. In the dating game, there can be a lot of roadblocks that get removed if you can simply change the situation to something that's more favorable. And that is what we want to talk about today. Game. And not needing it. Now, I'm going to share my screen. I want to talk about something I did. Okay. Make sure I've got it. I've done a decent amount of traveling in my life. Let me just make sure I have my conversation screen sort of set up. Yeah. Still roughing it, but getting better at this. Okay. I've done a decent amount of traveling in my life. Last time I took an international trip, though, was admittedly just before COVID. COVID kicked in, and I wasn't going to travel anywhere during COVID. And ever since COVID, I haven't been traveling for pleasure because I just wasn't as motivated. At the end of the day, while I talk a good game and I'm willing to walk around in the States without a mask, knowing that I'm fully vaccinated and feel fairly safe, I don't know how I would feel about being in a third world country. Not saying that that's what we're going to specifically look at now, but being someplace where I don't have access to the healthcare that I do here. That's a different look at a pandemic. And that was enough to kind of keep me from wanting to travel. But I've rekindled that interest. I am planning a trip to this year. Still got to do some coordinating to figure out exactly when that is. That's a separate conversation. But hopefully, I will be in the Philippines before year's end. Ideally, in the next month or two. We just have to see. That said, I want to talk about a trip I took to Southeast Asia, specifically to what you're going to see right here as I make it a little bigger. Let me zoom out for a bit just so you get a sense for where we are in the world. Okay. So you notice, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, specifically Indonesia. that is what I want to talk about today. Let's just discuss, a bit about Indonesia. Now, I went to Indonesia just before the pandemic to visit my sister. I was there, I had a nice little stint there. She's married. She and her husband travel the world, living in different countries for a year or two before relocating. Her husband has a job that he can do remotely, and they definitely take advantage of that to see as much of the world as they can. A bit jealous of the freedom that they have for that, but if you can do it and enjoy it. Okay. They're in Indonesia, and she invites me to visit. And it happened to coincide with a time where my kid was going to be on a trip with her mom, so it was perfect. I hopped on a flight, and I was in Indonesia about a day and a half later. As an aside, pay attention to how you book your flights. One thing in particular you should think about is when you are landing. Don't land someplace in the middle of the night. Your vacation starts with you going to bed. But I'd also encourage you to think about layovers and trying to minimize those. I was stuck in a Hong Kong airport for 12 hours because I didn't really pay attention to when my layovers were. I wouldn't do that again. That said, I eventually got to Bali. And we're going to be zeroing in on Bali. Hang on. We're going to be zipping into this for a bit. To talk about. Okay, there we go. Now I land in Bali. Airport's somewhere around here. And what you'll see down here is this little strip of space in Bali, which is called Canggu. That's how it's spelled. From the airport in Bali to Canggu, it's about, let's say, 90 minutes. My brother-in-law had a driver waiting on me. Zip me in, and suddenly I'm in Bali, and I'm visiting my sister and brother-in-law. They were renting a really nice house. It was gorgeous. Several rooms, a pool. They had a roommate, a neighbor, a tenant. That's the word I'm looking for. They had a tenant who needed a place to stay temporarily while her place was being finished. And for the first time in my life, I was visiting a place that really felt foreign to me. I've traveled to all sorts of places, but I've generally traveled to the touristy areas, and so they always felt fairly modern. The touristy areas of Canggu and Bali didn't feel as modern as I was used to. An example, you wake up first thing in the morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, and there are stray dogs just out and about on the streets. Dogs that haven't been vaccinated that, probably would give you rabies if they bit you. And that's just part of life. Just kind of paying attention and, being mindful of your surroundings and, aware of potential problems, potential opportunities. That's normal there. You need a little bit more common sense walking around in Bali on a day-to-day basis than you do in the States, where there are these guardrails around you that you don't really appreciate because you're not used to not seeing them there. But we're getting the game, so we're going to build up. While I was on the beach resort, I spent a lot of time at the beach, a lot of time at beach bars, a lot of time on a scooter, just sort of zipping around Bali and kind of taking in the scene. Here's one thing that was very interesting to me about Indonesia. The dollar is very, very strong there. So you can find yourself grabbing a buffet lunch at a very popular spot. And if you're not in the tourist location, but you're in the local locations that the tourists like to go to, that buffet lunch might be $2.50. That's a lot of rice, a couple of entrees, and maybe some kind of juice or a smoothie or something like that. You're spending $2.50. And to the locals, you're living like a king. That's down here. Why am I bringing that up? Well, let's go back to some of the things that we were talking about, which are the red pill and the black pill. Red pill is hypergamy. Women date guys who upgrade their lifestyle. Black pill is looks. Women want men who are interesting to look at. In Bali, the average salary for a month is roughly $500. Yeah. So on average, people are making, roughly $7,000 a year. If you're making $30,000 in the States, you are a below average earner. But you take that $30,000 to Bali and suddenly you're rich. There's a podcaster, Are You Beauty, who has a show, an episode, where she's specifically talking about how if you go to Indonesia, you're rich. Beyond that, in Indonesia, you have all of these exotic people who you're not used to seeing every day. Short, dark-skinned, slim to medium built, long-haired women, hardworking, honest people who have grown up in a place where they just don't have a lot of means. What does that mean? Well, number one, in the same way that when you visit Bali and you're looking at people who are exotic looking to you, you look exotic to them. So from a looks standpoint, you start to look much more attractive. Number two, you are making a lot more money on average. I'm assuming that you're making more money than they do. If you've got enough money to get to Bali and enjoy yourself, assuming you're earning more than the typical Bali local. So we're talking about looks and income. You have just leveled up, and all you did was relocate to some place where what you have works in your favor rather than to your detriment. It's a bit of a cheat code. Relaying some experiences, just personal experiences. When I was in Bali, I didn't try to date the locals. I knew I was just going to be there for a short time. So it didn't make sense because I wasn't going to be staying long enough to build any sort of a lasting relationship. And to be perfectly honest, here's something to think about when you're in Indonesia, kind of on the beach. Everybody's there visiting. Everybody's a tourist. Tinder might not do much for you in the States. But when you're in Bali, where everybody's just going to be in town for a couple more days and is just looking to have some fun, Tinder offers an entirely different experience. Entirely different. It's very easy to just say, hey, I'm at some beach bar. I don't remember what the beach bars were when I was there. But let's, for the sake of argument, say it was the Lawn. I don't think it was. No, it was something more along this. So let's say it was Seaweed Resto. It was very easy to just kind of click on Tinder and say, hey, what are you doing? I'm at Seaweed Resto. Do you want to come hang out? Very different response when you're on the beach. It might have been Beach Bums, Canggu. Looking at that picture, that looks kind of familiar. I spent time there. The point is, just from a dating standpoint, dating, if you're dating tourists, it's so much easier because everybody's there temporarily. Now, that's not lasting relationships, but that, just interaction. Yeah, interactions are much easier. However, let's kind of talk about the locals and some of what I saw when I was there. Remember, you walk around in Bali and you're an American, and to the locals, you are exotic looking and rich. Hypergamy looks working in your favor. Well, I guess to the Balinese people are just a friendlier people as a whole. Interacting with people is just easier in Bali because you don't have the walls built up that you do in America, where you don't want to be judged as a creep. You don't want anyone to think that you're trying to make them feel uncomfortable. You have to you kind of have to keep a bit of a distance from definitely from women here, unless you've got reason to believe they're interested. Otherwise, you might find yourself on TikTok, and nobody wants that. Interacting with people in Bali was just comfortable. They're friendly. They like to talk. They're curious to know more about you because you're an interesting looking person. You suddenly have game simply because you're different and rich to them. But what that means is you just need to be willing to have conversations with people. You don't need to be clever. You don't need to initiate a lot of times. You just need to be able to talk to someone. Case in point, I was out one night at my sister's. It was evening. I just didn't feel like being in the house. I'm on vacation. I want to see the sights. So hypothetically, let's say it's like 9:30 at night. I walk out and I walk down the street a couple of blocks to where the local restaurants are. A bunch of outdoor eateries, things of that nature. And I just went up to this sort of bar eatery. Had open, basically stools right on the side of it. 3 employees working there. I was the only guy at the bar. Got a beer, got a snack. I'm just sort of chatting with the staff. What do they have on the menu? What do they recommend? Basic stuff like that. 2 guys and a woman. And I'm not thinking about it. I'm just kind of chatting. While I was talking to the guy and asking him the questions, it was the woman in the group who started responding to my questions. And she kind of moved up to the bar and was chatting, and the 2 guys sort of backed off a bit. So I'm suddenly chatting with her. She was a nice looking woman. She was slim, young. She'd be above average in the States for sure, for sure. But in Bali, she was normal. I could, throw a stick and, hit a dozen women who looked like her because young, slim women with dark skin are common there. That's normal. That's every day. I started to realize, as we were talking, that the guys had backed off so she could kind of in a low-key way shoot her shot. She was chatting me up and being very friendly. I think she was interested. If I wanted to pursue something with her, well, I could have. Funny thing is, that wasn't she was nice, but wasn't even the top option when I was in Bali. My top option. Maybe I've told this story in another episode, but so be it. This time it's more relevant to this specific topic. My top option was this, or the most impressive, the most impressive situation I was in was this. Going to the beach with my brother-in-law and sister, and we're just going to hang out. There's this enclosed sort of outdoor dining area attached to this bar. And I'm going through the restaurant to figure out how to get to the backyard bar and eating area. There were a couple of staffers there. I think there were 3 staffers, this guy and 2 women. One of these women was just drop dead gorgeous, stunning. Stunning in a way that I like. She was short, but curvy, big butt, nice legs, just, defied gravity, the whole thing. You look at her and you think, wow, I don't see women who look like you very often. And I was a bit of a deer in the headlights. I didn't mean to stare. I really didn't. But she was smoking hot. So I looked just a little bit too long because, I kind of lost track of what I was doing. She was that kind of hot. She caught me staring. If I was in the States, I would have, at a minimum, I would have gotten like a rude scowl. But not here. She saw me looking. She saunters over. She asks, if I need anything. But not in the professional way of asking if there's something that I want from service. She was kind of being a little flirty. That was more of, hey, do you want to take this conversation further? This woman in the States is minimally an 8. I don't remember now. I think she had a mask on. So I don't know what her face looked like. Didn't really care. She might be a 9. She might be a 10. I don't remember her face. I'm going to assume that it's because she had a mask on and not that I just never really looked up at it because I was so distracted. Who's to say? But that's my story and I'm sticking to it. In the States, guys are going to be, waging wars to win a woman who looks like that. In Bali, all I did was stare a little bit too long and not intentionally. And that led to the start of a conversation. Just getting out and exploring what's available in Bali, that's all it takes. That puts you in situations where you'll have conversations. You don't have to start any flirty conversation. You can just ask for directions. Ask where the restroom is. Ask what whatever this person is selling or making or doing. Ask something very basic and very harmless. You can find yourself in a conversation with someone who finds you incredibly interesting and hopes that you feel the same way. Now, that kind of gets to the whole idea of what you'll do. Like, find things that are interesting to do, easy to say, but you might think, hey, that's hard to do. Well, let's talk about that for a second. Remember, landed in Bali. I spent my time on the beach in Canggu. I would strongly recommend that if you go to Indonesia, you spend your time on a beach resort and travel into the city for your day trips. Don't make the beach your day trip. Make the beach your hub. But let's do this because there we are. Ubud, very popular spot in Indonesia. If you're going to do a day trip, if you're going to go to Indonesia, you need to spend a day in Ubud. It is, it's the tourist spot in Indonesia, and there is a lot to do. From Canggu to Ubud, I would guess that it's 90 minutes by car if there's no traffic. Again, we had a car. If you're on a scooter, it might be faster. I think our actual trip might have taken 2.5 hours, but there was crazy traffic. However, it was an amazing trip. And as we talk about things to do, let's just kind of take a quick look at some of the things that I did when I was in Ubud. Okay. Not going to do a lot of slides, just a few. But hey, this is me with a helmet that's too small for my head. I've got a big melon to begin with, but that just made it look a lot worse. This is a scooter. I'm not a motorcycle person. I mean, I hadn't ridden a bike in over 10 years before I was in Bali, and it took me a day to kind of get reacclimated to riding it. However, here's a scooter. These are what you use to get around. It's very easy to get from point A to point B in a scooter. If you're in a car, it's like twice as long because you can't just zip in and out. Be mindful of the traffic because everybody's zipping in and out. But yeah, you hop on your scooter, easy to move around. You will always interact with people because when you're on your scooter, you generally just kind of park it someplace. So you might go to this house and you just park it wherever. And then when you're done, you hop on your scooter and you go. You're bumping into people who are parked next to you, near you. Sometimes people move your scooter half a block down the road because you're blocking an intersection. That's just par for the course around here. However, easy to interact, just renting a scooter, going to a local place and figuring out what you need to do to get a scooter for a week. I don't even remember how much a scooter was. Maybe a scooter for the week was $50. That might be an exaggeration. It probably wasn't that much. This is me. Whoops. This is me at some random temple in Ubud. Don't remember which one. Wearing this sarong. That is, it's part of the experience. Everybody who goes through this temple has to wear a sarong. Those sarongs are actually kind of nasty because you got to figure that there have been 1,000 tourists who've been wearing that thing before you, and they don't wash them. So this is like a sweaty, grungy sarong. However, you get past it, you rock it, and you make this picture in the temple look pretty awesome. So I had a lot of fun just touring a temple and kind of understanding what their culture was like. for perspective, the tourist temples they don't help you to understand, what are they? They're Buddhist. You don't really understand their Buddhist culture going to the temples because these temples are made for profit. Um, but you do get a sense for, what things were like back when Bali was more pristine, more true to its roots. And yeah, walking around in this temple took a couple of hours, interact with a lot of people, huge shop at the back of the temple. So after you've gone through it, tons of shopping for, clothes and fruit and all kinds of random things. Tons of people to interact with, both in the temple, in the shopping areas in the back, other tourists. Lots and lots of reasons to just chit chat. Here, caught a waterfall. Lots of people had drones. There was actually a couple up on a ridge right here doing a wedding photo. They were kind of being a little dangerous because I think the guy was holding the woman and she was sort of leaning a little bit to make it look dramatic. But hey, their life. Some great scenes. I'd never been up close to a waterfall before. So this was a lot of fun. Basically, you can kind of get in, try to swim to it. It's as small as this one is, incredible amount of water pressure. So trying to actually get to the waterfall is impossible. Michael Phelps couldn't swim fast enough to get into the water. But it is fun to see how close you can get. You don't really see how many people there are hanging out here, but there are tons of people just out enjoying this. You leave your clothes somewhere on the rocks, off in the distance where you can't see. There was a log. My sister was there because she wasn't going to get in the water. So I just left my clothes and shoes on the log. She kind of looked at them, but she also kind of took a bunch of pictures and kind of left them there. Nobody stole them, thank goodness, because I did have my wallet in my shoe. Very original hiding place. A lot of fun. Not the best photo, but I went out and I was walking around. This is a rice terrace. You don't have an appreciation for how big this thing is right here because this is a close-up. I wasn't trying to look cool. My sister just took a picture of me while I was walking around. Kind of feel like this suggests that I'm trying to look a little bit cooler than I actually was. I think I was just probably trying to make sure I didn't step in any crap. But walking around in these rice terraces, tons of people. Not so many locals. This is mainly a tourist attraction, but a lot of fun. And you're constantly interacting with people because, there are choke points. So everybody kind of converges on these different choke points. You're navigating them, the excuse me's, the, hey, what did you see around the corner? All that stuff leads to just casual conversation. That's a whole lot of fun. That's little sis. It was hot as hell and humid, so I am sweating like a pig. She was too, but it doesn't show as much. You get a little bit more appreciation for the rice terrace, but still, it looks fairly small here. This terrace was huge, and it was well worth it. There's this swing. A lot of people like to do this weird swing thing where they would kind of swing out, makes for great selfies, and swing back. There were swings around the terraces. Some of the swings had you up really high, so you might be, 20, 30 feet in the air at the pinnacle on some of those swings. And it was just kind of fun. So those were images of things I did. That was just one day trip into Bali. I could have spent a lot of time, if I had gone there by myself, doing day trips, just zipping in, exploring things, and zipping out. There are a lot of tourists who go there by themselves. That's why Tinder can be so popular, because they're by themselves and they're like, hey, sure, I'll hang out. But the moral of the story is, I wouldn't go and set up day trips to meet women. I would go and set up day trips to explore the country, to take in the sights, to enjoy, this whole new culture. You'll meet people just as a result of being outside, out and about. It will shock you how many people you can just have casual conversations with, because that's the norm. And I think that if you get out and you see it, you'll start to understand something that is kind of hard to put into words if you've never been outside the country. Have you ever met somebody who is from another country? They come to America and they're here for a bit, and then they say they want to go back to their home. That used to strike me as odd when I was a kid, because I always thought, this is America. Why would anyone want to leave America? What's wrong with you? You've made it to the promised land. I can appreciate some of their thoughts more now, because I can understand the outsider's perspective, which could be, as an outsider coming to America, they could view us as having a big old stick up our butt. We're sort of stiff. We're not necessarily just casually friendly. You come here and people don't just interact as calmly and openly as they're used to. And they can miss that. They can miss feeling connected. I felt connected when I was in Indonesia, just the people all around. And it was a really fun experience. Bali, Ubud, and Canggu. Those are the big destinations. My recommendation: get on a plane, visit Southeast Asia, see what life is like on the other side of the world. And then you tell me if your life isn't better for it or not. It's the Last Good Man in Jersey, signing out.